95,850 slaps. And unlike the meat beater, which did it in 6 hours, Sonic could actually do it in 9.6 picoseconds. Yeah, the fewer slaps means that the 13.5 was actually an overestimate. He can do it in 9.6. And that updated slap count, which works out to 117 slaps per second, is the maximum cooking efficiency, ensuring effectively 0 degrees are lost due to heat dissipation during the cooking process. So do you want to be able to slap cook a chicken? All you need to do is deliver it 117 slaps per second. And that is, it's definitely beyond the realm of possibility. The current world record for delivering punches is 334 punches in a single minute. It's certainly impressive, but you're gonna need to be 21 times faster than that to reach optimum chicken heating capacity. So who is capable of delivering 117 slaps per second? The Pokemon Machamp. According to his Pokedex entry in Fire Red, his 4 arms can deliver a combined 1,000 punches every 2 seconds, meaning that Machamp will heat that chicken to cooked in just under 3 minutes and 5 seconds. Not quite the 9.6 picoseconds that we calculated for Sonic, but still, he's a winner of some chicken dinner. As for other candidates, Quicksilver's probably getting the job done. If his body can react fast enough to move out of the path of a bullet in .006 seconds, which is what we see him do in the X-Men movies, then surely he can deliver a slap in that same amount of time, which would amount to 166 slaps per second, comfortably over our requirement for optimum heating, though even at those speeds it would still take him 9 minutes and 37 seconds to deliver enough slaps to fully cook the thing. And you see, that bullet dodge actually gives us a pretty good benchmark. As we saw with Quicksilver, any character fast enough to react to a speeding bullet is meeting the requirement for not losing a single degree of heat during the slap cook. So that includes the likes of Neo, Goku, Superman, the Flash, other speedsters. Now, I also looked into characters capable of freezing time. After all, someone like Zack Morris or Link from Breath of the Wild would be able to stop time, lightly slap the chicken thousands of times at his leisure, and then technically cook the chicken in 0 seconds, right? Well, not quite. Remember how we established that energy is a function of time? Basically, if no time passes, there can be no energy. If we plug a 0 into the equation from earlier, that results in a value that's undefined. You can't divide by 0 here, people. So characters capable of slowing time down are actually far more effective at cook slapping a chicken than characters who can only freeze time outright. So ultimately, I'm gonna have to give the slapping crown to Sonic. Not only does he meet the requirement of delivering those slaps in less time than it would take the chicken to cool down due to heat dissipation, but he delivers those slaps in less time than it takes to blink. In fact, based on what we know about the speed that human eyelids move, he's cooking that chicken about 10.4 billion times faster than the blink of an eye. Hey, wanna see me cook a chicken? Wanna see me do it again and again and again and again? Of course, he's fictional, so we'll never actually get to enjoy a Sonic slap-cooked chicken. However, what we can enjoy is a delicious meal from the sponsor of today's episode, HelloFresh. Steph and I have been on the HelloFresh train for a while now because it cuts out stressful meal planning and prepping. That way you can just enjoy cooking and get dinner on the table in about 30 minutes, or heck, even 20 minutes with their quick and easy options for when you gotta go fast. Now, I know what you're all wondering, and the answer is yes. I did try slapping some of the HelloFresh meals, and no, it did not work out. I highly recommend sticking with their easy-to-follow instructions because why mess with perfection? HelloFresh has more 5-star recipes than any other meal kit, so you know that you're getting something delicious every single time, especially if you order the garlic bread, which is just incredible on its own. So here's the deal, theorists. Head on over to HelloFresh.com and use the code FoodTheory12 to get yourself 12 free meals and get this, free shipping. By the way, not only is the shipping free, but HelloFresh is also really great about letting you change your delivery days or skipping a week when you need to, and that's really useful for us because our family has an unpredictable schedule. I would assume you are largely the same way, and that might be helpful to you too. Again, this is 12 free meals that we're talking about, people. No strings, no hidden delivery fees, nothing. 12 meals of free food delivered straight to your door. So get on it. Go to HelloFresh.com and use the code FoodTheory12 to let them know that I sent you. And remember, theorists, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit.
If it's gorgeous, you want stunning, beautiful. Look for the grit. Because it's the pros who are out there, pulling together dozens of projects a year, thousands in a lifetime. They're not cookie cutter and never the same. Pros know what looks amazing, and they know where remarkable is always in stock. At Floor & Decor.
New Halo Top with delicious mix-ins in every bite, but half the calories.
Nothing like reading some comments first thing in the morning. Oh, this one looks interesting.
Food theory idea. How long could you survive in a locked supermarket just using the food in there?
Huh, that one's really good. I'll have to think about it. Yeah, that is a pretty good question. Internet, welcome to Food Theory, the show you can still safely consume well past its expiration date. Theorists, I just want to start off by saying how much I love the theory ideas you submit, especially when they result in episodes like the one today. But as I soon learned, answers like these are not easy to come by, friends. I mean, I originated pixel measurements. I have been finding numbers where numbers don't exist for a decade now. But grocery store survival may just be one of the trickiest challenges that I faced in the last 10 years making YouTube videos. For one thing, we're dealing with a lot of food products here. See, each distinct product in a grocery store gets assigned an SKU, or stock keeping unit. The average grocery store has an SKU count of about 33,000. That is 33,000 different product offerings. And that's not even taking into account the multiples of each item that the store has in its inventory, which means that even an average-sized grocery store likely has hundreds of thousands of items on its shelves. But how long can those items actually sustain a human being? In order to answer that, we'll need to go a step beyond counting the number of items and actually quantify the amount of food in a grocery store. After all, not every item in a grocery store is edible, and those that are edible have drastically different nutritional values. Plus, there's an added layer of complexity that has to be taken into account here: spoilage. This is actually one of our biggest factors because it's not as though our hypothetical person trapped inside the grocery store can just eat millions and millions of calories on day one before anything spoils and then coast off of body fat for the next 50 years. Sadly, the human stomach can only hold so much. This is coming from experience. Test those limits each and every time I step foot inside a cheesecake factory. So this means that our hypothetical person, who I'm gonna call Evan in honor of today's commenter, is gonna have to employ an actual strategy to maximize the amount of food going into his stomach and minimize the amount of food that's going to spoil. Theorists, today's prompt is an absolute beast that has a lot of moving parts. So that's what's gonna make it so fun to answer. Hope you've all worked up an appetite for knowledge, that is, because today we're sinking our teeth into supermarket survival. For today's purposes, we're gonna quantify food in terms of calories. The FDA uses 2,000 calories per day as a general guide for nutrition advice, though they're also quick to admit that this is an oversimplification and there's really no one-size-fits-all number for caloric intake. But for this hypothetical exercise, it's gonna have to do the trick. We're also gonna assume that Evan is locked inside an average-sized grocery store, which these days is about 38,000 square feet according to Progressive Grocer. And that's actually fantastic news for us because one of our food theory field researchers, Luke, just so happens to live up the street from a grocery store exactly that size. See, today's episode is gonna require some good old-fashioned elbow grease, friends. This is a very specific question that we're attempting to answer, and the very specific inventory information that we need isn't publicly available knowledge. In order to get that info, we have no choice but to count the calories of grocery store items manually. And if that sounds like a ridiculous amount of work, yes. But this is food theory, people. If we're not gonna answer the question that one person was curious about in the comments, then who else will? Finally, we need to make a couple of assumptions about Evan's circumstances. We're gonna actually assume that the power is out in Evan's post-apocalyptic survival scenario. That means no ovens, no refrigerators, and no freezers. We'll also assume that he has no running water. Why are we making things so hard on poor Evan? Well, because our answer becomes more useful that way. If we determine that Evan can live out his entire natural lifespan inside a worst-case scenario grocery store with no utilities, then we know that he can also live a full lifespan inside a grocery store where water is easy to come by, and the shelf life of many foods can be extended using refrigeration. So, with all that housekeeping out of the way, the time has finally come to determine Evan's fate. How long is the maximum amount of time that one person can survive inside of a grocery store? Well, let's talk about that crucial first day. Me, I see it playing out a little something like this. Disheveled, Evan stumbles into a strikingly average-sized grocery store. In this case called Stater Brothers, but it could be interchangeable for any around the US. He frantically locks the doors behind him. Outside, some super intense doomsday scenario is raging on. I'm thinking aliens, zombies, alien zombies. You know, it works. The only other person with the key to the store is also the person with the key to Evan's heart, his true love, Theorista. Together they swore that if they were ever separated amid the chaos, they would rendezvous here, at the Stater Brothers, where they started their love in the frozen food food aisle. Being the first to arrive, it is now Evan's sacred duty to wait and to survive for as long as he possibly can without leaving. Look, we put a lot of work into this episode. We are gonna amp it up with the drama. The grocery store's power is out, which means that the dairy section and the deli section are gonna be the first to spoil. Evan knows that he has to act quickly. Bacteria can render room temperature dairy and raw meat too dangerous for human consumption within hours. So if those calories are gonna count his survival, he's gonna have to move and move fast. Evan's first order of business is to begin extending the shelf life of any quick spoiling foods he possibly can. Evan knows that in addition to calories, his body needs 20 different amino acids in order to survive, plus a variety of minerals and vitamins. So the more varied his diet is, the better. Amino acids, you gotta catch them all. Evan also knows that he should be able to extend the life of various raw meats by about a month or two. Even without refrigeration and electricity, the store has everything he needs. There's 377 pounds of salt in aisle 6 for curing the meat, and there's a downright shocking amount of fire building supplies in aisle 13 for smoking the meat. Via curing and smoking, he's able to save 120,000 calories worth of raw meat from spoiling, which, well,
Temptations Kitten Dry Food, 100% complete balance for kittens. High quality protein kittens can't resist.
Olivia and Vince now share a space. Not so much taste. Seriously? And when she was stuck on marrying their style,
smoking, he's able to save 120,000 calories worth of raw meat from spoiling, which, while impressive, is a mere fraction of the 10.7 million meat-supplied calories that would be available to him in the section if things didn't spoil. But hey, extra time is extra time. By doing this all-important first step, Evan can ensure that red meat, poultry, and even seafood are a part of his diet for the first couple months of his grocery store stay. Plus, packaged deli meats like salami will last for a month or so unrefrigerated. The fire, which Evan built near an open window so the smoke can escape, continues to be useful even after the meat's been smoked. Evan is able to dehydrate fruits and veggies with some success over his primitive campfire setup. The dehydrated vegetables wind up with a shelf life of about 6 months, and the dehydrated fruits last up to a year. And perhaps best of all, the open window will allow Evan to collect rainwater from here to the rest of his stay once the bottled water runs out. So by spending his first days in the grocery store hard at work, Evan manages to secure a year's worth of calories out of food that would have otherwise spoiled in a matter of weeks. Way to go, Evan. Life handed you lemons and you made dehydrated lemons. Ever the overachiever though, Evan goes on and makes his already varied diet even more varied by working baked goods from the bakery section into his meals. Thanks to Ziploc bags, he's able to get a few good weeks out of the cookies and breads before they mold over. He also takes full advantage of the vitamins in aisle 10. Since many of the vitamins begin to lose their potency after a couple of years, Evan knows that he might as well use them early and often to round out his diet. Finally, after 1 year and more than 730,000 calories consumed, the dehydrated fruit begins to spoil, and Evan celebrates his 1 year anniversary inside the grocery store. But the celebration is a somber one, as there is still no sign of the fair fairy stuff. Once year 2 rolls around, Evan doesn't have to do nearly as much work. Well, aside from stirring the compost pile every once in a while, all the spoiled food from the deli, produce, dairy, and bakery sections really pile up, and that's not even mentioning the human waste. Ugh. These days, Evan is munching on foods with lengthy shelf lives, like dried pasta, white rice, rolled oats, powdered milk, molasses, potato flakes, whole wheat grains, factory-sealed jerky, dried beans, and lentils. In order to get some fruits and veggies into his diet, he also starts dipping into certain canned foods that have relatively short shelf lives due to their high acidity, such as canned fruit, pickles, and jellies. All told, these foods provide him with 5.1 million calories over the course of 7 years. When his 8th anniversary inside the grocery store arrives, life is pretty pleasant for Evan. You know, aside from the fact that his beloved theorista has yet to show up. Evan understands that 2 types of food await him on the shelves from this point forward. Foods with indefinite shelf lives and factory-sealed foods that degrade over time. Indefinite shelf life foods include products like raw honey, Jell-O mix, sugar, hard alcohol, soy sauce, cornstarch, and others. These products, if stored properly, will be just as tasty and nutritious decades down the line as they are today. The same cannot be said for the foods in the second category. Foods like canned goods, wine, breakfast cereal, and peanut butter, which all degrade over time. But it's worth knowing that these foods don't spoil like the raw meat and dairy did. As long as they remain unopened and completely sealed, these canned and factory sealed foods don't really become inedible, despite what their expiration dates might suggest. Now, it doesn't mean that the foods won't turn stale or rancid. They absolutely will. But even in their most disgusting forms, these foods won't make you ill, and they'll retain at least some of their nutritional value to Evan. That is, assuming he can manage to keep them down. After all, rancid peanut butter isn't exactly exactly pleasant to eat, and perhaps the only thing less appetizing than eating wet dog food is eating expired wet dog food. Deep down, Evan knows that he needs to eat his way through the latter category first, so let's get to it. 4-3 stuff. Now, there are a lot of foods that fall into this category, which means Evan is forced to eat a lot of stale and rancid food over the next few decades. You heard that right, decades. The remaining canned goods alone account for 3.4 million calories, or 4.6 years worth of food. Because canned food is sterile and sealed, bacteria can't really get into it unless the can gets dented or damaged in some way. Similarly, factory-sealed products like cereal, cookies, crackers, and chips will go stale and degrade over time, but they still should technically remain edible. This also applies to drinks such as soda, beer, and wine, and many jarred products like peanut butter and jarred nuts. All told, these products and others add up to 30.8 million calories. That is enough food to last Evan another whopping 42.2 years if he's able to space it out right. Now, it's hard to describe how unpleasant this 42.2 year stretch is for Evan. I mean, to get to this point, he would have had to have gone through 5,100 cans of wet pet food, but he persists. And now he gets to enjoy the good life again because the indefinite shelf life foods await him, and they all still taste great, even 50 years after he got first locked into this place. When added together, these indefinite shelf life products accounted for 13.1 years worth of food. And once those 13.1 years run out, well, the shelves are empty, and Evan runs out. As the final drop of vodka drips onto his tongue, Evan feels the icy grip of death overtake him. He collapses onto the ground, soon to become one with the compost pile he cultivated for so many decades. And as his eyes close forever, he finally gets the answer he so desperately sought as a younger man. 63.3 years. A person can survive locked inside a grocery store using only the food inside for 63.3 years. But suddenly, moments after Evan draws his final breath, we hear a key turn in the lock. It's Theresta. At long last, she's made it to their agreed-upon rendezvous point. She got waylaid for a few decades by, I don't know, what did I say, zombie aliens? Something? Anyway, through it all, she never stopped thinking about her true love, Evan. Alas, though, she's too late. Yeah, it is a super bummer of an ending. If only Evan had figured out a way to stay alive just a wee bit longer, they could have held each other one last time. But there's no way Evan could have pulled that one off. The shelves are empty. There's nothing else he could have done. Unless...
New Chips Ahoy, Big Chewy.
That's right, theorists. Evan still has one last card to play, farming. A lot of grocery stores have at least a small flower section with potted plants. Our Stater Brothers was no different, and it had about 4 cubic feet of potting soil in all. This soil, of course, can be used to create a small garden with seeds and spores harvested from the produce section in the early days. Potatoes, which conveniently contain all the essential amino acids, are the crop that Evan probably should focus on when he first arrives in the store. Unfortunately, with such a limited supply of soil, Evan is never going to be able to survive entirely off his garden, even if he doubles his soil volume by mixing in 50% compost, which is the maximum ratio recommended. 8 cubic feet of soil can support about 24 potato plants. Each plant produces about 110 calorie potatoes per year, for 26,400 calories annually. Theorists, that is not even 2 weeks worth of food. If only there was a crop that can grow in 100% compost. After all, Evan's got way more than 4 cubic feet of that lying around, and his compost pile only grows bigger with every passing day. Well, I've got good news for you, Evan, because there is such a crop. It requires no sunlight to grow, minimal water, and is readily available in grocery stores. I'm talking mushrooms. Mushroom stems from the grocery store are really easy to propagate. Pretty much all you need to create a mushroom terrarium is an empty plastic bottle and coffee grounds. And of course, Evan has plenty of access to those. From there, mushrooms can be introduced into the compost pile. And from here, the numbers start working out in Evan's favor in a big way. 1 pound of button mushrooms contains 100 calories. A growing area of around 200 square feet can produce 5,000 pounds of mushroom per year. That means that in order to get the 2,000 calories per day he needs to survive, Evan would only need to plant about 3,000 square feet of button mushrooms. And in a 30,000 square foot grocery store, I don't think 10% of your floor space is too much to sacrifice for a crop that'll spare you the indignity of gulping down expired baby food. Between the mushrooms and the potato garden, Evan will have renewable resources of essential amino acids acids, vitamins, and minerals, not to mention a surplus of calories. So not only will farming allow Evan to survive long enough to see his beloved Theorista again, he won't have to eat a single expired food product along the way. So at long last, theorists were finally able to answer the question in full. Not only can a person survive their entire natural life locked inside of a grocery store using only the food inside, but that person's family and future generations can make do as well. Evan's story has a happy ending, and it's all thanks to farming. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit. Thanks for supporting the Food Theory channel, friends. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would recommend heading over and watching our episode on pizza optimization next. We ran real-world tests to determine which pizza chain can give you the most bang for your buck. It's YouTube that you can use, so give her a watch, give that subscribe button a click, and I'll see you all next week. Quick question, what was the best thing that your school lunch ever served? Seriously, write your answer down in the comments below. I'm just really fascinated by this topic. Because at my school, when I was growing up, the cream of the crop was known as cheesy dippers. They were literally just breadsticks with a bunch of cheese melted on them and meat sauce to dip them in. Any other schools out there have those or something similar to that? Because kids went crazy for these things. They showed up on the menu like every other Wednesday and the line was out the door for them. And it always confused me because, you know, they were just breadsticks and sauce. But little did Tot Pat realize at the time that those cheesy dippers, as well as all the other hot dogs, pizzas, and mystery meats that lunch lady Brenda was slopping down onto my plate, were part of a grand conspiracy, a cascade of lies and backtalk. So eat up while you can, my friends. After today's episode, you'll never look at lunchtime the same way again. Internet, welcome to Food Theory. Class is now in session. That's right, friendos, it's back to school season, and with it comes the return of lunchtime, the time when cliques are formed that can make or break your school reputation. Or, you know, you could always be like me and reject the entire social hierarchy, instead forcing yourself to sit at each individual lunch table one at a time as part of a grand social experiment to see which social cliques respond most angrily to an outsider encroaching on their territory. True story, that was my 8th grade science fair project. The self-classified sporty girls wound up being the worst. They threw food at me and they physically tried to lift me out of my seat for the entire hour in an attempt to get me to move. But science moves for no one. I locked my legs under the bench and held on for dear life. And you know what? It was worth it. Them throwing food resulted in me getting some free fries that day. And eventually, I got myself a blue ribbon at the Ohio State Science Fair. So get dunked on there, Mallory, Courtney, Bethany, Catherine with a K, and other Bethany. Today, though, we're not here to talk about the social politics of the lunchroom. We're talking about the food politics of the lunchroom. You see, school lunches have been in the news a lot over the last few years. The USDA recently increased funding for school meals. Some states, like Maine and California, are now permanently offering free school lunches for everyone. And of course, the ever-present topic of whether school lunches are healthy enough for kids. Might seem like an odd topic to be a hotbed of controversy, but school lunches and their nutrition are actually one of those issues that have a direct influence on how the next generation grows up. And while I think everyone would agree that healthier is better, the history of school lunches shows just how many competing interests exist in the competition over what little Jimmy is cramming into his pie hole come noon 30, sometime between phys ed and algebra. Case in point, this. A tomato. It's a fruit, right? I think that's pretty well established by now, but for decades when I was growing up, people were confused about that, constantly thinking that it was a vegetable. And their confusion was entirely justified because, you know what? It was. So was ketchup. So was pizza. Vegetable, vegetable, vegetable. So how was pizza possibly considered a vegetable? Well, it all began here in the school cafeteria. So line up and hold out your tray. I'm about to serve up some tasty history so you can start to understand the conspiracy behind the slop that students get served. You see, the origin of America's nationwide school lunch program actually dates back to 1946 when it was considered to be a matter of national defense. No joke. Well, it's true that some schools in the US did offer their students food as early as 1894. It didn't become something that public schools were legally required to do until the passage of the National School Lunch Act. This was right after World War II. And during the war, they found that a large number of enlistees who could have otherwise been eligible for service ended up being disqualified due to their poor nutrition. Yeah, apparently the thing that got the government to stand up and make feeding kids a priority was realizing that emaciated uneducated Americans wouldn't be able to die for their country. So instead, they decided to feed them up and then ship them out. But regardless of the reasons that actually got the thing to start, people immediately were liking to it. Parents across the nation were more than happy to take a break from slapping together some PB&Js, so school lunch programs got bigger throughout the rest of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. There was the school breakfast program, the child and adult food care program, the special milk program. You know what, I'm just gonna come out and say it, there's something I inherently don't trust about the phrase special milk. But not only did the parents like it, the government did too, because it solved another problem that they had. Namely, that the US had itself a surplus of domestic produce and didn't exactly know what to do with it all. I've actually talked about this in a previous theory about America's secret supply of underground cheese, which, if you haven't watched, make sure you check out that episode after this one. But basically, school lunches were one place that they could offload a bunch of that extra cheddar. Feed kids while also using up your surplus cheese. Two birds with one Swiss. And cheese was hardly the only example of this. I mean, I don't want to say that the school lunch program was just a convenient dumping ground for all the extra unsold food that nobody wanted to actually buy. I don't want to say it, but you know, a lot of times throughout the history of the school lunch program, it kind of ended up being true. For instance, when the USDA, the US Department of Agriculture, was faced with that dairy surplus, they initially bought the cheese, right, and put it into caves, and eventually it became part of my cheesy dippers. Fine. But then they had a realization. Hey, those cows that keep producing so much milk that we can't figure out what to do with? Oh yeah, they're also beef. Suspicious look over at the cows, and thus the whole herd buyout program of the 1980s was born. School lunches suddenly took the form of burgers and pizza and anything that could make use of beef and or cheese. So where then does the school lunch conspiracy come in? Nutrition. You see, even though surplus was certainly one driving factor dictating what was and wasn't getting served as a part of school lunches, the other was nutrition. School lunches had to at least be nutritious. And because meal regulations still stated that kids had to be served 2 full servings of vegetables with their school lunch, everything was just hunky-dory, right? Right? Well, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that those who set the definitions around food don't always do so in an impartial way. I mean, our vision of a healthy diet used to look like this, with the grains being the foundation of a healthy, balanced meal. Conveniently, it was also the cheapest type of food to serve up. I mean, I've already done a whole video about the various competing forces that got the food pyramid to look the way that it did, but suffice it to say, for a long time, the guiding principle was eat more carbs. Come to think of it, the food pyramid was created by the USDA, the same USDA that was responsible for the school lunch program in the first place. So the same organization that comes up with the lunches also gets to come up with the nutrition rubric that those lunches need to be graded on. Surely no potential for bias or conflict of interest there, right? Well, in 1979, USDA guidelines were loosened to the point that nutrition standards for school lunch items only had to meet the minimum requirements, rather than the stricter requirements of being quote-unquote officially healthy. So, how minimum is a minimum standard? Well, one USDA official said to explain it as follows, quote, "If a candy bar has only one nut in it, we feel it is above our minimum nutrient standards." In other words, things ain't looking too great. But at the very least, they still have that 2 vegetable rule, right? That ensured that even though a peanutty baby Ruth might have gotten served up as a side next to your mac and cheese, you at least have some green beans and carrots on the plate to balance it all out.
Ashley Sleep offers mattresses for every level of comfort, with affordable options that meet every style of sleeper, from cozy to cooling to contouring support. So shop Ashley Sleep today.
It all out? Well, let's pull up what I said a few seconds ago. Quote, kids have to be served 2 full servings of vegetables with their school lunch. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to play a game. You see, that's what the regulations said, except it presents a problem. Produce, it's expensive. It's expensive to store at the correct temperatures. It doesn't keep for very long periods of time. It takes varying times to prepare, and it needs to be shipped under proper conditions, usually within specific seasons. Remember, we're talking about technology from the late 70s and early 80s to get all this done. As if that wasn't bad enough, surveys of school lunch waste repeatedly show that vegetables are the item that kids leave unused and throw out the most often. So in essence, what you're dealing with is the food item that's generating the highest cost and also has itself the lowest return. It's only there because parents expect healthy vegetables to be offered to their kids by the school. It has to be on the menu. The regulations say it. Then again, words can be open to some creative interpretation. So if you're a government agency in the 80s whose funding has just been slashed 30% by the president and you're looking to save money on school lunches while still technically meeting the letter of the law, where in this sentence do you think there might be some wiggle room? That, my friends, is the game we're playing today. I'll give all you budding politicians a second to think it over. And while you're taking that second to come up with an answer, make sure you subscribe to Food Theory. No one else is serving up the bitter truth about the lies of your food. Subscribing is free, and as we all know, brain food is best food. It's also 0 calories. All right, you got your responses ready? Great. Solution number 1, the word right here, vegetable. Vegetable already has itself a nebulous nebulous definition, which is an episode to itself on another day, but suffice it to say that the administration at the time was eager to use that murkiness to their own advantage. In an attempt to meet the letter of the law in technicality, but not necessarily in spirit, the USDA tried to list the ingredients of condiments to help boost up the number of vegetables that were being served to the kiddos in school. Ketchup? Well, if you read the label, it says tomato right there. That's a vegetable, right? Count it. Pizza? Well, that's not just any sauce, my friend. That is tomato sauce. Count it. Packets of relish. That right there, friends, is a serving of cucumber. And that is the story of how ketchup almost became a vegetable. Almost. If it seems to you like this school lunch program strategy was a wee bit on the cheaty side, you're not alone. It became a national debate that culminated in Pennsylvania Senator Henry J. Heinz III. Yep, Heinz, the Heinz brand ketchup dynasty, the family who did the politics, go figure, delivered a speech from the U.S. Senate floor saying, quote, "Ketchup is a condiment. This is one of the most ridiculous regulations I ever heard of. And I suppose I need not add that I do know something about ketchup and relish, or did at one time." The New York Times described the whole thing as the Emperor's New Condiments, and eventually the USDA withdrew what would come to be known as the ketchup proposal. Except we're still playing this game and we haven't solved the problem. We still gotta cut costs while meeting the letter of the law. So let's look again at our sentence. Kids have to be served 2 full servings of vegetables with their school lunch. If you can't change a condiment into a vegetable, why not try swapping the labels on something else? And that's when they found their new loophole. This word right here, serve. The USDA adopted new guidelines, still largely in use today, based around the offer versus serve model, which is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of being required to serve a certain helping of vegetables, what if school lunch programs were only required to offer a certain helping of vegetables? And since kids were making the choice, they could be safely relied on to decline said offer. The defense of that position is that serving vegetables to kids doesn't do much good if the kids are just gonna chuck those vegetables right into the trash. And so this became a major cost-cutting measure. Schools could suddenly keep a bare minimum of produce on hand and justify it in the name of reducing waste by listening to feedback. So was that the end of our ketchup is a vegetable debate? Yeah, at least it was until today. You see, this whole sordid history got me curious. Does ketchup actually have enough tomato in there to count as a serving of vegetables? Like, sure, we're all fine to laugh at how stupid this whole thing was and acknowledge that it was a bit shady as far as cost-cutting measures are concerned. Then again, I've seen the Heinz commercials. They
squeeze more than 25 whole red ripe tomatoes into a bottle.
So I reached into the fridge and pulled out my bottle of the Heinz tomato ketchup to do some math. Based on info from eatforhealth.gov, a single vegetable serving is 75 grams or 1 medium-sized tomato. Now, the ad here says that there are 25 tomatoes in a 40-ounce bottle of ketchup. So you would assume that a whole bottle of ketchup is going to be serving 25 vegetables, right? Not so much. We don't know how big those tomatoes are. They could just be 25 whole red ripe cherry tomatoes. In 2015, Heinz was actually sued in Israel by local ketchup producer Osem on the grounds that they utilized too much high fructose corn syrup in their products, thereby not qualifying for the name ketchup under Israeli nutritional standards. Reports from the case estimated that the amount of tomato in this tomato-based product was between 17 and 39%, depending on the lab that was doing the testing. Luckily, the nutrition label for Heinz is much more helpful than the label for something like pink sauce. It tells us that there are 148 grams worth of tomato to make 100 grams of ketchup. And yeah, that might seem weird to have more tomato for less ketchup, but remember that things lose mass as they're cooked. Anyway, if you had a whole 40-ounce bottle of ketchup, that would be about 15 servings of vegetables. It would also be nearly 1,500 calories to get those vegetables, considering the different stuff in there. We're also not accounting for bioavailability and all that, so take the estimate with a grain of salt. Anyway, a vegetable is a vegetable, right? So in theory, in food theory, by the numbers, you could argue that by grabbing a bottle of ketchup and chugging away, you were potentially satisfying at least the raw materials quotient of getting some vegetables. Then again, remember, when it came to school lunches, the lawmakers were talking about ketchup packets. So how many packets would the typical student need to eat in order to get a single serving of vegetables based on the USDA proposal? At minimum, you're looking at 9. 8 1/3 if we're being precise. Hope you brought some tater tots for that huge pool of ketchup. Pizza, meanwhile, yep, still considered to be a vegetable, actually, if there's enough sauce on it. In 2012, the Obama administration unsuccessfully attempted to raise the minimum veggie requirements back up for the first time in like forever. Under guidelines first proposed in 2010 aimed at curbing childhood obesity, frozen pizzas of the type typically served by the slice in school lunches could retain their serving of vegetables if the sauce quotient was bumped up to half a cup of sauce as opposed to just tablespoons. Except yet again, people have problems with that. ConAgra, which supplies an estimated 75% of frozen pizza to U.S. schools, argued that over-saucing their product would make the kids not want to eat it. And then they spent $6 million lobbying the government to convince lawmakers of that exact fact. And thus, school pizza remained the dry, bready square that it's been for decades. Or, ConAgra, you could just go the route that my elementary school did and rebrand the whole thing as Cheesy Dippers, no sauce required. Boom! Just saved you $6 million in lobbying the government. In the end, the point of all of this is to show you how tricky school lunches really are. There's always this tough back and forth happening between what parents want their kids to eat, what kids actually want to eat, how much schools and governments want to spend to make those sorts of choices possible, and the companies who are involved that turn a profit over whatever the outcome is. So in the end, just remember this one thing. The next time your mom tells you need to eat your vegetables, you say back, I need to eat more of this pizza to get enough tomato paste so it adds up to a full serving. If you manage to get away with that one, you're gonna have yourself a great career in politics. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit. Or, you could just not worry about any of that using the help of today's sponsor, Ritual. I gotta be honest with you, my diet is bad. It's not quite Cheesy Dippers every day bad, but it's pretty darn close. A lot of times I'm just grabbing whatever I can on the go, with health and nutrition taking a solid backseat to speed and convenience. That's why I choose to supplement my diet using Ritual, the obsessively researched and transparently made multivitamin. And when I say transparent, I mean every definition of the word. Each shipment comes with info on the way that their nutrients are sourced. They're also transparent because, capsules are transparent. Ritual capsules are also delayed release, which makes them gentle even when you're taking them on an empty stomach. Which again, I appreciate because I tend to skip way too many meals. Personally, I use their Essential for Men vitamin, which contains 10 high-quality nutrients like vitamin A, D, omega-3, and zinc. But they also have themselves a multivitamin for women, anyone over 50. Heck, there's even one specifically built for teens, so you don't have to worry about getting your nutrients sucking down hundreds of ketchup packets. Also, and this is just a small detail that I'm throwing in here, but I appreciate it, the capsules have a little mint flavor to them, which I like, because normally I hate just the taste of dry capsule in my mouth. And if you're worried about cost, well, it's only $1 a day to have 10 high-quality nutrients delivered straight to your door every month, no strings attached. So fill in the gaps in your diet and your daily lunches using Ritual, a small step that helps support a healthy foundation for your body. You can get yourself 20% off your first month of Ritual by going to ritual.com/food20, FOOD20, and using the code FOOD20 at checkout. That's ritual.com/food20. Never worry about the amount of sauce on your pizza ever again. Until next week, guys, bon appetit.
The future's worth fighting for, because our nation is worth believing in. Together, we answer America's call to win. We are Marines. We were made for this.
Acqua di Gio, Giorgio Armani.
I have seen a video circulating online. Sorry, I can't get myself straight right now. I have seen a video circulating online that says that this lemonade should be illegal. Illegal? I mean, it's lemonade. Lemons are delicious. It's a little bit bitter, a little bit sour. It's great. It is balanced, as all things should be. Illegal? No. Push all of that aside. What they are claiming is that this right here has more caffeine than 4 espressos worth of caffeine. Excuse me. Find that a little hard to believe. But also seems kind of unhealthy. Panera, what are you doing? Are you trying to kill me? It's time we find out. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, the only show that gets a buzz from being right. No matter if you're a Chipotle Chad or a Baja Fresh Brad, you're gonna wanna pay attention to this one, because today we're talking about Panera Bread's newest product, Crack in a Cup. You see, about a month ago, a video was uploaded onto TikTok by a user named Sarah Bounce. In it, she takes 2 minutes to rant about one of Panera's newest menu items, their Mango Yuzu Citrus Lemonade. But this isn't your typical selfie car rant video about restaurant lemonade, my friends. Oh no! This one's a bit unhinged.
I learned something that should be illegal. 100% should be illegal. So, and it has to do with this drink. Give me a second. So, at Panera. I cannot get myself straight.
Pretty soon, you start to realize what exactly is going on.
This is the Mango Yuzu Citrus Charged Lemonade. When I'm sitting there, I'll drink 4 or 5 of these. The regular size has 82 grams of sugar. Let's push that aside. It has 260 milligrams of caffeine. An espresso, I looked it up, has 63 milligrams of caffeine. 63! for one shot of espresso.
She's essentially drugged out of her mind on caffeine. Practically leaks through the screen onto your scrolling thumb as she rants. She is literally a real-life version of Tweet from South Park.
I pulled out my hair!
But that's weird, right? A lemonade having over 4 times the amount of caffeine as an espresso? There's no way. I thought this whole thing had to have been a bit. A joke that she was just putting on for the camera to go viral, but no. She was making the video because she legitimately wanted people to know and thought that Panera was breaking the law by not labeling their lemonade accordingly.
I don't have caffeine very much. I thought. I'm not used to caffeine like that, and I feel like the Hulk. Panera, who's gonna create a product with 263 milligrams of caffeine? Look what you're doing. I'm dying.
Also, can I just call out that I love the fact that she finishes this rant with one final slurp? She'd be tripping on that caffeine, but you know she needs to take that final swig. Besides being just pure internet gold, her claims really piqued my theorist interest. In a lot of cases like this, whether it's hot coffee from McDonald's or random car rants about lemonade, our first impulse is to label the person as kind of crazy, or negligent, or a Karen, or whatever. But history has shown that a lot of times these people wind up being right. So, is this a case of one random Panera patron ripping off a local restaurant to be her personal WeWork?
I work at Panera. No. I work in a Panera because I don't want to pay for a co-working space, but working at home makes me want to dig my own grave because I'm alone.
Or is there something else going on here with Panera actively duping people into mega dosing on caffeine? Is the lemonade actually more caffeinated than the coffee? And if it is Panera doing enough to make that fact clear to its consumers? And lastly, is Sarah in this video literally dying of a caffeine overdose? I think we need to look into all of it. What say you, Sarah?
Oh, this is gonna be whirlwind.
So looking at the online nutrition facts for Panera's new line of charged lemonades, we see that they come in 3 flavors: mango yuzu citrus, strawberry lemon mint, and Fuji apple cranberry. And yet, as Sarah claims, a single serving comes with 350 calories and a whopping 260 milligrams of caffeine coming from a combination of coffee extract and guarana extract. So she's definitely right about the amount, but how much caffeine is that really? And what's that gonna do to your body? Well, the first place to start here is with the science. Most of us understand that caffeine is a neurostimulant and vasodilator, which means that the more you drink, the more your blood vessels are expanding, allowing blood to rush to your brain and limbs. This blood rush causes you to feel more awake. But if you have too much, you start to feel jittery. Now, Sarah says that on a typical day, she's refilling her cup multiple times.
I'll drink 4 or 5 of these. I was always like, man, when I work at Panera, I feel great.
Running the math, she's been consuming a whopping 1,100 to 1,300 milligrams of caffeine a day. A staggering number when you consider that an average cup of coffee contains between 95 and 140 milligrams. In fact, drinking 4 cups of coffee a day qualifies you as a heavy coffee drinker. And yet, here's Sarah, 4 cups a day is a third of the caffeine that she's consuming through this lemonade. Even if you compare her Panera caffeine intake to energy drinks that hinge on giving you, energy, she's still in the artery melting stratosphere. Those drinks typically contain about 110 milligrams of caffeine for an entire can. Basically, Sarah here's chugging like 11 Red Bulls per day, or 6.5 tall Starbucks dark roasts, or 28 cans of Diet Coke. I'm a Diet Coke addict who drinks way too much, and even I can recognize that that is an alarming amount of soda. It's no wonder that she feels so good working at Panera when she's literally being drugged into believing it gives her supercharged work performance. So Sarah's consuming an insane amount of caffeine from these charged lemonades. That much is undeniable. But is Panera acting illegally in any of this? Is Panera negligent in some way? Should they be doing a better job of telling people what's inside of this stuff? Well, let's actually talk about that. I went to my local Panera and took some photos of the charged lemonade area, and immediately you can see that these aren't marketed as energy drinks. Sure, they're named charged lemonades, but what exactly does that mean? Underneath the flavor heading, there's fine print that says it has as much caffeine as the dark roast coffee, but it's small, and you definitely lost my interest as soon as he started the sentence with plant-based and clean. And yeah, there's the nutrition facts below that, but 260 milligrams of caffeine? What's that mean? Is that a lot? A little? It's unclear unless I'm actively taking out my phone and looking up what that amount is. And again, all of this is marketed under the name lemonade. Not a drink that you normally associated with being infused with so much caffeine that it pops your eyeballs out of your skull. So the labeling could certainly be doing a lot more to communicate that this stuff is the caffeine equivalent of jet fuel, but it's actually the placement of the lemonade that's even more sus. These lemonades are located right next to the soda fountain, not the coffee stand. Sure, soda has caffeine, but not nearly to the level of these lemonades. And perhaps most damning of all, this is historically where the normal, non-caffeinated lemonades have sat for years in the restaurant. I know, because I go to Panera all the time. And I always like trying the new lemonades and teas that sit there. In fact, just like Sarah, before I ever saw her video, I too noticed the new flavors and tried them on a recent visit, thinking that they were just regular lemonades and teas, because it's always been just regular tea and lemonade in that area. Granted, my mind didn't melt through my ears because they always tend to have way too many empty calories and sugar for my taste, so I wasn't chugging like 5 cups of the stuff, but still, I am anecdotal proof that the labeling doesn't make it clear what these things actually are. Overall, there's just something fishy about all of this. Like, why are they hiding the fact that these are caffeinated in some sort of tiny print?
Panera, who's gonna create a product with 263 milligrams of caffeine?
Who's gonna do that, you ask? Well, it's gonna be a company that wants to make sure that you feel great, awake, and energized after every trip to Panera, even if you don't quite understand why. Caffeine does have addictive properties, after all, and can lead people to developing independence. And people on caffeine are more likely to make impulsive decisions, like buying more stuff from Panera. This also isn't the first time a company has done something like this either. Starbucks Refreshers, probably the main competitor to these lemonades, have come under fire recently for how much caffeine is hidden inside a product that's largely aimed at kids on social media. I mean, when you look at the fun colors and the overall marketing, it's hard to deny who these drinks are made for.
This is my new obsession. I may have a problem.
You do, or at least you might. You may just be secretly getting fed doses of caffeine, so you develop a dependence on these drinks and these restaurants that serve them. And mind you, those refreshers contain almost 6 times less caffeine than the lemonade that's being served at Panera. It's kind of like Panera saw an opportunity and decided to go nuclear with the whole thing. So as we've seen, the charged lemonade caffeine threat is real, seems pretty darn dishonest in its marketing, and it seems like there may just be sinister intentions behind all of it. But is any of it illegal like Sarah initially claimed? The FDA often works in areas where consumer expectations or knowledge don't match the products or how they're marketed, so just what does the FDA have to say about caffeine disclosures? Well, the FDA, as we've talked about in the past, is the organization charged with regulating the labeling requirements for packaged products that you see on grocery store shelves. We know from previous episodes that they care about all kinds of things, like sugar and fat and cholesterol, but do they care about caffeine? Oh, you bet they do, especially since the world's favorite little addiction has been up in the ante in recent years. Americans' love of working late, partying hard, and recording all of it for social media clout has led to a lot of caffeination in order for all of us to stay functional, with the biggest caffeine revolution coming from energy drinks starting in the early 2000s. Red Bull has technically been offering us wings since 1984, but it wasn't until it hit the shelves in the US in the late 90s that it really took off, where it replaced coffee for people who, I don't know, want something that tastes even worse than coffee. The stuff is way too sweet for me, honestly, but it did spawn a huge number of competitors in the market, including famous energy drinks like Rockstar and Monster Energy. The point is, though, that all of these products are labeled as energy drinks first and foremost. Both in their branding and in their labeling. For caffeinated beverages, there are 2 main pieces of information that are contained on that label. First, serving size, caffeine per serving, per container, or both. This also needs to be printed separately from the nutrition facts so people don't mistake it for just another ingredient. Secondly, the label must include a warning statement, not intended or recommended for children, pregnant or breastfeeding women, or those sensitive to caffeine. These are explicit warnings on the cans to help prevent people who shouldn't be drinking a lot of caffeine from drinking it. And it's not enough just to say how much caffeine in it, you have to explicitly label it as a high caffeine product that certain people should not drink. Look, it's right there on every Monster Energy drink. It's not huge, and it's certainly not the same neon letters, but at least you can find it somewhere on there. So how does any of this apply to Panera? Bizarrely, it doesn't. Those labels that you see on energy drinks aren't exactly an age-old policy, and they're not as required as you might assume. Remember when I mentioned that energy drinks surged in popularity in the late 90s after Red Bull came to the US? Well, in that same time period, there's starting to be more and more incidents of people ending up in the ER from, you guessed it, caffeine overdose side effects. And I don't mean side effects like, oh, I had too much caffeine and energetically danced my way off a cliff. I mean seizures, liver and kidney injury, heart arrhythmia, psychotic symptoms. From 2005 to 2011, ER visits related to caffeine side effects increased tenfold, according to the Journal of Caffeine Research from 2013. Was it all just the result of energy drinks? No, there were also companies at the time that were marketing just straight caffeine powder unregulated as a dietary supplement, which, whoa. I mean, I joke about having an IV of Diet Coke strapped permanently in my arm, but even my caffeine-addled brain can't get behind that one. The FDA didn't take kindly to that one either, so they cracked down on high caffeine products in 2015 with a warning letter. That's right, not a law, just a strongly worded email. The FDA, for as much as we think of them as this almighty organization smiting food companies down with its ban hammer of government cheese are actually people who stay out of the issues for as long as they possibly can. Instead of hitting companies over the head with rules that'll likely lead to a lot of litigation, a lot of backlash, and possibly a huge amount of money spent on fighting with said companies, the FDA often opts for more of a come-to-Jesus moment in the form of warning letters, basically telling companies that if they don't get their act together, they're all gonna be in big trouble, mister. So with caffeine-related health issues on the rise and the FDA getting ready to pounce, American caffeine producers got together and decided to shape up as little as they possibly could. They recognized that in dietary supplements and energy drinks, no one understood how much caffeine they were consuming and what it could do to them. So the American Beverage Association, a group of all the major US beverage companies, started including high caffeine warning labels that you see on all the energy drinks. The actual FDA regulations, though, they end with just including the amount of caffeine in a beverage, nothing else. Those warning labels, they aren't there because of a law, they're there because PepsiCo, Snapple, Coke, Monster, Red Bull, and Rockstar have collectively agreed to play nice in order to avoid future issues and future lawsuits. While that might sound like a bunch of companies just doing the bare minimum and only making changes because they want to avoid big smackdown lawsuits, I'm here to say, yeah, that's basically what's happening. But it's still better than what's happening down at your local Panera. You see, while calorie disclosures are typically required at chain or quick-serve restaurants like Panera, caffeine labeling is not. You can probably just tell this intuitively. When you walk into a McDonald's, you don't see the caffeine content of each soda listed above its spot in the soda fountain. This is because there's no requirement about caffeine labeling. The jury's still out about how restaurants should disclose that kind of information. There are some cases that have been made recently, especially outside of the US, that foods in restaurants like McDonald's should be labeled if they contain caffeine. But all that would require is a small label that says contains caffeine, no amounts, serving sizes, no warnings. This is because more and more companies are sneaking caffeine or energy boosting products into food. Everything from Kashi granola bars to yogurt, because guess what? After you eat it, you feel inexplicably great.
Man, when I work at Panera, I feel great. I feel awesome. I get so much done.
And the next time you want to feel that way again, you'll eat it. But if you don't know what's happening, you don't know that actually you're just being manipulated by micro doses of caffeine. As manufacturers are sneaking energy boosting supplements into their regular products like, I don't know, putting caffeine into a beverage that you would never expect to have caffeine, more and more people are consuming caffeine without being aware of what that actually means. Speaking of not knowing what it means, let's go back to that charged lemonade label at Panera. It has the calories, which has been required to appear since 2018, and it has the caffeine, like we talked about before. What a conscientious citizen Panera is, right? No. Well, it looks like Panera is going above and beyond by including this. You can view this little hanging tag as a tiny handwritten lawsuit shield. By explicitly labeling the caffeine in these drinks, even if no one understands what it actually means, Panera can attempt to avoid a lawsuit claiming that patrons didn't know how much caffeine they were drinking. I mean, look, it's right there. It's right on the front of the thing that they're filling up their cup with. What they're not making explicitly clear is that the amount of caffeine in one serving of this lemonade, if you can even call it that, is the equivalent of 3 servings of Monster energy drink. And that's talking about the small size. The large is equivalent to 4.5 servings, which is more than 2 full cans of water. Every Monster energy drink comes with a warning, but the Panera lemonade just comes with a free refill sign. It's also notable that the large size here contains 390 milligrams of caffeine. That number, I suspect, is very specifically chosen. The FDA states that for adults, 400 milligrams of caffeine is the maximum amount recommended to drink in an entire day before you start seeing negative side effects. And Panera is conveniently shimmied right in under that limbo stick with 390 milligrams of caffeine in their lemonade. This way, if the patron dies of a caffeine overdose and their family comes back to the restaurant, Panera can point to the fact that their serving size is within the FDA recommended limits on caffeine and that the product was labeled in the restaurant. Truly, Panera is living up to its motto, food as it should be, to avoid federal litigation. But I mean, how big of a problem is this really? Even if people really overdo it on the caffeine, are they risking something more than just some temporary illness? Well, yeah, actually, very much so. We've already going back to the early 2000s, but if 25 years of data isn't enough, let's look at where it becomes life and death. According to the FDA, toxic effects related to caffeine, like seizures, can appear with the consumption of around 1,200 milligrams, the amount that we know Sarah from TikTok is drinking. But that's talking about a fully grown, healthy adult with no medical conditions. And by medical conditions, I'm not just talking about something serious like chronic heart disease, I mean the medical condition of being under 18, being pregnant, having diabetes. I mean, the list goes on. Perfectly healthy, normal people with no existing conditions can literally die die of caffeine overdose. In 2011, a 14-year-old girl with a heart condition known as mitral valve prolapse died after consuming 2 Monster energy drinks in 24 hours. That's 480 milligrams of caffeine, the same amount of caffeine that's in just over 1 large Panera lemonade. In another case, a 16-year-old male with no known medical conditions died after consuming a McDonald's latte, a Mountain Dew, and an unnamed energy drink in 2 hours, 2 of which wouldn't have been labeled as containing high levels of caffeine. At the end of the day, the public doesn't think of caffeine as a health risk because the vast majority of us still associate it with a couple cups of coffee in the morning, or a bottle of Coke here.
Pacifico isn't just a crisp Mexican lager. It's a beer with a story. Legend says it was discovered by accident by a group of surfers. We'll let you discover it for yourself. Pacifico, find your own way.
Just when I thought I was done covering stupid Gen Z TikTok trends, they pull me back in. This time, the liquid isn't a pink sauce, it's not even NyQuil. It's Borg. Not that Borg, this Borg. I know, it looks a lot less cool, right? That's saying a lot because, you know, we're talking about Star Trek. Cool and Star Trek, never really synonymous with each other. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, where the only thing we're imbibing in excess is knowledge. So let's just talk about the latest Gen Z craze sweeping the campuses of US universities. Excuse me, what was that? Oh, okay, yeah. The latest Gen Z craze that's been sweeping the campuses of US universities for the last several years. Yeah, once again, the mainstream media is a little bit late on the uptake for this one. What you see before you on screen is a liquor store in a jug, cheaply named the Borg. This thing has been making headlines lately, not just because of its incredibly dangerous premise, but also because of its looks, which are somewhere between overly hydrated Jim Bro and the Beverly Hillbillies. If you've never seen one of these things, the Borg, or Blackout Rage Gallon, is basically everything that you see here. Gallon jug, unidentifiable liquid inside, usually a bright color that's reminiscent of a culty Kool-Aid, and a gaggle of college tailgaters sloshing them around at hip height, slinging back to adults, and recapping. It is hard to describe just how unappealing these things look from the outside, but the Blackout Rage Gallon seems to be the apparent edgelord of the drinking game world, and it's recently made the rounds on TikTok with lots of confused and angry commentary. Gen Z's rendition of Freshman Fun here has garnered over 85 million views across the platform, and honestly, it's not hard to understand why once you learn that the recipe for one of these things involves a practically lethal dose of alcohol thrown into a random unlabeled jug. Safety, thy name is not Borg. So what exactly is in this thing? Well, each individual Borg may be lovingly handcrafted to meet the drinker's needs. Your typical Borg contains roughly a half gallon or 1.9 liters of water. So off the bat, you better be hoping that you're planning a party near the restroom. Even the most elastic bladder is gonna be needing it after a couple swigs of this puppy. And if you're an absolute mad lad when it comes to hydration, some people are even throwing in electrolyte packets like Liquid IV, likely there to try and offset what comes next in the recipe, a whopping fifth of alcohol, 750 milliliters. For reference, that is an entire bottle of Sky vodka. That is 17 servings of alcohol right in your actual fingertips. Next, you're gonna wanna make sure that you'll taste absolutely none of that alcohol by drowning it in flavor enhancers. The standard choices seem to be Mio Black Cherry or Kool-Aid Tropical Punch, because I love my alcohol to remind me of elementary school snack time. And there it is, boom, done. Your Borg is complete. It all adds up to a gallon of fun and a whole lot of hospital visits. You couldn't tell I'm approaching this quote-unquote beverage with some sober skepticism, since at the outset this seems to be nothing if not a completely terrible idea. But what if it's not? What if there's an appeal here that we're overlooking? I mean, taking a glance at this thing, the redeeming qualities would have to be really deeply buried. But what if instead of trashing on something new, we try to find some of its merit instead? Come on, hold your nose. Let's take a swig of this Borg-tastic trend so at the end of the episode you can honestly review to tell me in the comments whether you think this idea is sickeningly smart or still just sickening. Down the hatch, my fellow theorists. Now, the Borg is purely a product of college day drinking culture. The thing is basically a bucket of cheap alcohol. It's not about trying to craft the most elegant tiki drink for your tri-delt luau. This is about getting trashed for pennies on the dollar. But just how bad is the Borg? The traditional Borg recipe contains 17 servings of alcohol. You probably don't need to count on your fingers to guess that that one is probably a bit more than you should be having. The definition of binge drinking is 4 drinks or more for a female and 5 drinks or more for a male within a 2-hour period. Something that is uncomfortably easy to achieve for for the Borg-toting masses out there. But that's just if we stop at mere binge drinking. What the Borg actually qualifies for is the other category that you don't usually hear about, high-intensity drinking. True to its name, this kind of drinking, as defined by the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, is an alcohol intake twice or more the gender-specific threshold for binge drinking. So about 8 drinks for a female and 10 for a male, which again puts us just over the 50% mark for a single Borg. Now, I hear ya. A gallon of anything is a lot, alcohol or otherwise. That's where the flavorings come in, which introduces a whole other set of problems into this recipe. You see, the traditional version of the Borg involves a full bottle of Mio black cherry flavoring, but you're not just dropping in a bunch of artificial colors and sweeteners there. What you're also adding in there is caffeine, and a lot of it. The Mio black cherry contains an eye-watering 1,080 milligrams of caffeine. I kind of feel like I've had it out for caffeine in recent episodes, especially for a guy who drinks a fair share of caffeine myself, but even by my standards, that is an over-the-top amount of caffeine, and it is well into the realm of dangerous. As we discussed in the Panera Lemonade episode, the FDA's recommended maximum amount of caffeine is 400 milligrams per day. That is the absolute upper limit. Beyond that, you're running into serious risk of seizures, heart problems, and all kinds of other side effects. But here's the Borg taking that amount of caffeine and doubling it. So high-intensity drinking mixed with caffeine overdose sounds like a pretty bad combination, right? Well, the sum of its parts are actually much worse than you might initially think. In 2005, a group of recent Ohio State grads the company designed to create and distribute a prototype of their new drink, energy beer. Basically, while they were in college, they'd started mixing energy drinks with various alcoholic beverages. They got a lot of positive feedback. Seeing that they could make money off of it, they created the drink now known as Four Loko, a flavored beer that was infused with caffeine. By 2008, this drink was ready for the mainstream US market, and within a year, it had exploded in popularity and was going international. And then
each can contains the equivalent of 6 beers and 2 cups of coffee, leading some to call Four Loko blackout in a can or liquid cocaine.
A man in New Jersey is suing the makers of an alcohol and caffeine drink called Four Loko because he claims it caused permanent heart damage.
Four Loko played a role in their son's death.
So far, 4 kids in White Plains have been hospitalized with alcohol poisoning.
Peter's family is suing the makers of Four Loko following his death. The 15-year-old drank 2 cans of Four Loko and was legally intoxicated when he walked into the path of an oncoming car.
In 2010, the Food and Drug Administration and Federal Trade Commission sent warning letters to all producers of caffeinated alcoholic beverages. Why? Well,
Hi everyone, I'm Samir, and this year we have something special for you, the Android Show, I/O Edition. We hope you'll all tune in on May 13th to see what's new on Android. Whoa, May 13th, that's coming fast.
They were seeing increased reports of teens getting hospitalized with blood alcohol contents equal to twice the legal limit. We're all familiar with caffeine in drinks, right? And we've talked on this channel before about the fact that caffeine is a substance the FDA considers to be GRAS, or generally recognized as safe. What you probably didn't know, though, is that caffeine's GRAS certification only applies to its use in cola beverages. Start sticking it in alcohol and suddenly you're looking at something the FDA no longer considers to be safe, and for very good reason. See, caffeine is a neurostimulant, meaning it has the ability to stimulate the central nervous system and dilate your arteries, increasing blood flow to your brain, which thereby makes you feel more alert. Alcohol, on the other hand, is a little bit more complicated. One of the reasons alcohol doesn't have any effects on different people is because it can act as a neurodepressant. When you first ingest alcohol, it releases dopamine into your brain, causing a temporary elation or happy feeling. Usually the state releases loud, happy, and raucous while they're drinking. Then after a while, the second effect of alcohol kicks in, which is a lot more of a downer. Alcohol affects neurotransmitters called GABA. GABA is key to regulating your nervous system. It actually regulates a lot of your core motor abilities, like balance, reasoning, and making you feel calmer and more easy to heal. Alcohol disrupts the production of GABA, which is why you feel so many sensory effects of alcohol, from loss of coordination to slurred speech and sleepiness. So what happens when you mix an upper like caffeine with alcohol? I initially think that they're just going to cancel each other out, right? That's exactly what's going to happen. Because caffeine dilates your blood vessels, making them bigger, it means that they're able to carry more blood. This literally opens up the pathway for more alcohol to get into your brain. Blood vessels also needs more room for alcohol. That's why patients hospitalized after drinking things like Four Loko had unexpectedly high blood alcohol content. On top of all of that, caffeine can temporarily keep you awake and alert long enough to believe that you're not getting as drunk as you actually are, fooling your body and your better judgment into drinking way past your normal limits. You're not feeling the alcohol yet, so you're probably safe to keep going. Fast forward to today, where drinks like Four Loko have removed all their caffeine content for all of the reasons we just discussed. Then you have the Borg. The Borg is basically the same story all over again, turning you into a drunken Energizer bunny before turning you into an ER case. And if you think all of this is too sciencey and theoretical, don't have to take my word for it. We've seen this playing out in the real world lately. Earlier this month, the University of Massachusetts Amherst were hospitalized due to Borg consumption. It took a total of 28 different ambulances to handle all of the cases. So at this point, we've pretty much trashed the idea of this drink, right? There's no coming back from this. But what if I told you that in spite of all the terrible things that we've leveled at the Borg so far in this episode, the underlying principle behind why it exists in the first place are actually impressive, commendable even. Don't get it twisted, I'm not saying that this thing is something you should be consuming. It is dangerous on so many levels. It's obviously a bad idea to drink 17 shots of vodka mixed with caffeine. But you know what's a good idea? Not drinking even one shot of someone else's vodka. There are some things out there on college campuses that are just as scary, if not more scary, than drinking in excess. I'm talking about spiked drinks. The rate of drugged or tampered alcohol on college campuses is staggering. Drugs designed to incapacitate victims are extremely prevalent in colleges, with over 300,000 cases reported every year. And mind you, those are only the cases that are getting reported. In one study done by a University of South Carolina research team, they found that 7.8% of their sample reported incidents in which they'd been drugged. 1.4% said they'd either drugged someone themselves or they knew someone who had drugged someone else. In yet another study from 2016, 44% of men and 56% of women reported accidentally ingesting something spiked without knowing it, mostly during their college years. For women, that is over half. 1 in every 2 people that you see walking around the average college. And over 11% of people reported having been the victim of some type of assault or inappropriate incident in college related to consuming spiked food or drinks. So now that you know the stats, can you think of one thing you might be able to do to make sure your drink is never spiked at a party? Maybe you carry your own. Maybe you make sure it's in a sealed container with a cap that only you open and close. Maybe you make sure you make it yourself because you can't trust anything made by someone else in questionable social circumstances. Suddenly, the reasons for the Borg come clearly into focus. A Borg isn't just about fun, it's about safety. If you're planning on getting drunk, which isn't something that I recommend, but if you're gonna do it anyway, you need to know that even when your judgment isn't great, you don't need to worry about there being extra stuff in your drink that you didn't plan on ingesting. Another brilliant Borg moment, allowing people to adjust their personal level of alcohol consumption without anyone knowing. You ever go to a party where you felt pressured to drink more than you were comfortable with? Maybe someone poured a drink for you that you didn't want or was stronger than you wanted, but because of the social setting, you felt pressured to say yes. On college campuses where drinking culture can sometimes be high pressure, it can be associated with hazing or expected in order to conform, a Borg allows individuals to hide how much they're consuming or not consuming. A look back on TikTok actually shows that among the Borg tags, there's a fair number of non-alcoholic Borg options out there that people are making for everything from curing hangovers to curing COVID. Good luck with that one, I guess. The idea that the Borg can look like everyone else's drink without having to conform to everyone else's drink is brilliant. You're able to fit in without having to put yourself at risk. And speaking of that COVID thing, I don't think the Borg is going to be curing it, but it's certainly slowing the spread at these parties. Long gone are the days of communal punch bowls or mixing up your red Solo cup with someone else's. With the Borg, you've got your jug, and swigging from that jug is going to be keeping you safe from everyone else's germs. So at the end of the day, while the Borg is still very dangerous, presenting the opportunity to drink yourself way over any recognizable limit when it comes to alcohol and caffeine, two issues that I cannot overly express the dangers of, there is another major side of the story. The Borg allows younger drinkers to control exactly what they're drinking and how much they're drinking. It allows big parties to be at least slightly cleaner, and it provides the ultimate security knowing that your drink is only your drink. You hold onto it, you seal it, you know that it hasn't been tampered with. So you know what, Gen Z? I see it, I get it. Heck, I mostly respect it. The Borg is the best, worst decision that you can possibly have. Maybe if you just found yourself just a smaller bottle, guys, maybe things would be a little bit better. Name it the Borg Baby or something. Be super cute, super kawaii, probably get you a little extra clout in the process. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Thanks for drinking responsibly.
Go, go, go!
Why would anyone keep on running in this weather? Because
Earlier this year, we tested 25 different energy drinks from Prime to Monster and Ghost to Gatorade, all in an effort to scientifically determine which brand was best. Link is right there at the top of the screen if you want to go watch our analysis and revel in Red Bull getting absolutely dunked on. But looking back, each and every one of our contestants was missing one magical ingredient. The ingredient of gamer. Targeted at gamers that promise to deliver us a boom headshot of energy. So which brand is gonna deliver us the most 360 no-scopes and which is gonna leave us as the cringiest noobs? Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to separate the G-Fuels from the G-Fools. Let's get powered up. Hello Internet, welcome to Food Theory, where I'm trading my long-term heart health for your late-night gaming binges. At this point, the video game industry rakes in hundreds of billions of dollars in cash a year.
Hey guys, finished testing that game yet?
We just finished level 3 and need to tighten up the graphics a little bit. I can't believe we got jobs doing this.
And my mom said I would never get anywhere with these games.
And so, of course, an entire culture has also blossomed around gaming to try to capitalize off of that sweet, sweet streamer life. Of course, you got your fancy RGB keyboards, your cat ear headphones, and your waifu gaming sleeves, but if you're gonna game right, you've also gotta fuel up right. Sure, there's always the classics like Mountain Dew and Doritos, but the market's evolved. The whole scene, which was at one point dominated by the likes of Red Bull and Monster, has grown to become much more sophisticated.
The G Fuel is jam-packed with vitamins, antioxidants, and plant-based ingredients. Is that a tank? The trash! It's the guy! It's not!
I'm done! Looks like he's really taking this seriously. Uh-oh. This is Evo Grand Finals for real.
Like I said, sophisticated. But in all seriousness, as more money and attention's been brought to the scene, especially with the huge surge in popularity around professional esports, there's also been a rise in companies looking to make a name for themselves as the go-to beverage brand for gamers. Sometimes that push produces something good, and sometimes it produces something like this Coca-Cola commercial. I love that Coke went and released whatever this thing is, and yet they still won't sponsor me. Anyway, in the energy drink space, many brands are trying to take a more scientific approach to fueling gamers. Brands claiming to give you exactly what your body needs to keep button mashing all through the night. These drink solutions come in all kinds of forms. Drinks, powders, even inhalers. And they come packaged with all sorts of embarrassing names like anime girl thigh, guacamole gamer fart, titty milk.
This does not taste like titty milk.
I am severely concerned for Santi's mental health in this role. But for all the borderline branding, how much is hype and how much is actually performance? Do these drinks really do what they're advertising themselves as doing? Do they really help gamers get good? Today we bust out our science hats, look under the hood, and find out which of these will reign supreme as the leadest of Hacksaws. Now, if you're like me going into this episode, you probably assume that there's no major difference between your average can of Red Bull and G Fuel. But that's not actually the case. Sure, most gamer drinks these days do have plenty of caffeine, borderline illegal amounts of it, as well as a bunch of vitamins. We all have some sort of additional ingredients ranging from more amino acids and electrolytes to herbal extracts. All of these things are usually lumped together under the label of dietary ingredients on the can. That's right, these aren't just energy drinks anymore, they're dietary supplements. Sounds like it should make them healthy, right? Well, not really. According to the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, all a drink or food needs to have is some vitamin, mineral, or herb thrown in and listed on the nutrition facts to qualify as a dietary supplement. In other words, the bar is set pretty darn low. Gin, you know, alcohol, well, that could very well be labeled as a dietary supplement too, considering it's made with a bunch of botanicals. But that doesn't suddenly make it part of a balanced breakfast. What's worse, the FDA doesn't regulate these ingredients like they do with drugs, so the efficacy of the dietary supplements isn't something that's given a stamp of approval. The reason I'm pointing all this out is that people tend to get fooled by all the sciencey names, automatically assuming that it means there's extra goodness jammed into the can, but that's just not true. Plenty of these brands seem to just throw different things at the wall hoping that something sticks. Making things worse, even if an ingredient could be beneficial in some way, oftentimes the amounts are just wildly different from brand to brand, sometimes staying so low that they're still practically useless. So as we go through the tests today, it's important to take some of this data with a grain of salt, since hard information on some of the effectiveness of these things just doesn't exist yet. But putting how effective they are or aren't aside, we're gonna judge them by whether enough of the ingredients in question have been added into the formulation. Now, a few weeks ago on GT Live, we took our list of 16 of the most popular gamer-focused energy drinks, and we judged them purely based on their taste. And let's just say it was a wild and largely unpleasant ride.
Have you ever wondered what artificial flavors taste like?
Oh no!
Oh, regret.
Oh, this is kind of like a stale bubble gum that I really have to work to get the flavor out of. Maybe I unwrapped a cool comic out of it with Bazooka Joe doing something mildly amusing.
Then you chew it like 5 times and the flavor goes away and you're left with like a very chemically, this is what they like flavor. This is that.
Yeah, this is the Bazooka Joe bubblegum flavor of gamer powdered beverage. But by the end, we managed to narrow the field down from 16 to 10. The group we ended up with was a collection of Mountain Dews, the OG Mountain Dew soda, as well as their strawberry melon and Baja Blast flavored energy drinks, 3 G Fuels, 2 powdered, blue raspberry and cherry, and 1 canned snow cone, Ultimate Edition Coke and Coke Zero, then a few outlier contenders like Rogue Tropical Breeze and Speed Wave. G Fuel explicitly markets itself as the best gaming and esports energy drink, so obviously we wanted to give that one a test. Ultimate Edition Coke was a special flavor made in conjunction with Riot Games, the studio behind League of Legends, and was therefore meant to taste like gaming experience points, which, judging from the flavor, meant that leveling up tastes like bananas? I love that all of us, you didn't see Astrid, and you did it, I did it, we all had the like curious head cock all at the exact same time, every single one of us. Sneak energy drinks like to lean heavily into gaming through social media posts, like what can you say in COD that would also make sense on a date, or the 9 best games in history according to ChatGPT. Finally, Mountain Dew's connection to gaming goes back beyond. Thanks to its higher caffeine content than most sodas, Mountain Dew became the go-to choice for gamers trying to pull all-nighters in the early days. And I do mean the early days. In a Windows-DOS developer log from 1994, I found a reference to the ancient connection between programmers and Mountain Dew. Quote, "Fortunately, Windows handles this error gracefully, figuring that the programmer is simply overdosing on Mountain Dew and ignoring requests for non-existent modules." So as we start picking them apart, what do all these energy drinks have in common? Well, caffeine, obviously. And while we're all familiar with caffeine, most people have a fundamental misunderstanding of how it actually works in our body. See, our brains are full of things called adenosine receptors. These receptors act to alert your brain that it's time for rest, regulating and slowing the electric pulses that are going to your heart. What caffeine does is block those receptors. By blocking the receptors, your brain suddenly feels more awake because it's lacking the signals that are actively telling it to go to sleep. In other words, caffeine isn't working because it's giving us a boost, it's working because it's preventing us from feeling tired. Kind of like a zombie. They're not alive, they're just not capable of feeling dead. But here's the rub to all this. While caffeine blocks the adenosine receptors temporarily, it doesn't stop the adenosine production. Once that caffeine wears off, the receptors get flooded with all that adenosine buildup, causing the post-energy drink crash. Of course, you can always keep your caffeine intake going to keep blocking the receptors, but like with any drug, your body is going to slowly build up a tolerance. And that tolerance might create some issues. You see, in addition to blocking adenosine receptors, caffeine also causes your arteries to contract. This in turn forces the heart to push itself harder to get blood throughout the body. Now, under normal circumstances, that isn't that much of an issue. Caffeine is short-lived, and the amount of it in a typical can of soda or cup of coffee isn't really pushing into any sort of dangerous territory. However, as caffeine doses get larger and more prolonged, your arteries start to contract even more, causing your heart to work even harder. This is where the jitters come in. Sure, at small doses, caffeine might help you improve your fine motor skills, but at large doses, it's gonna push your heart too far and cause your fine motor skills to deteriorate. Not only is that a potential health issue, it's also a potential gamer issue. If the only difference between victory and defeat is a few millimeters on a controller, too much caffeine is gonna be a major detriment. Also, you know the headaches that you get when you go a bit too long without your coffee? Well, when I say that caffeine restricts your blood vessels, I mean all your blood vessels, including the ones that are up in your brain. This causes your body to pump more blood into your head so that you know, don't die. But when you suddenly cut off the caffeine levels and your blood vessels expand again, your body doesn't get that memo right away, and so it continues to force all the extra blood up there, which sets off all sorts of alarms to the nerves in your brain, making you feel like your head's about to pop like a zit. But caffeine isn't the only chemical shared across most of these gamer drinks. There's also taurine. Taurine is a naturally produced amino acid that the body uses for energy production. So it's thought that adding more taurine to your system might actually increase your overall energy levels. Early tests with mice have supported this, showing that taurine combined with caffeine helps combat sleep deprivation more than just caffeine alone. How much that actually works for humans is still up for debate, but overall the working philosophy is that caffeine helps stave off your natural exhaustion, while taurine helps your body create new energy. So at this point, how are our candidates looking? We want some caffeine, but hopefully a low enough dose to avoid the shakes. We also want taurine in there to help generate some long-term energy. So let's just start off with the obvious loser, OG Mountain Dew. Sure, Mountain Dew's been associated with gamers forever, and it technically won our taste test mostly because of the 46 grams of sugar pumped into those 12 ounces of liquid. But overall, Mountain Dew doesn't do a whole lot in terms of energy beyond the 54 milligrams of caffeine in there. Oh, and while we're at it, might save this one for an episode down the line, but sugar, yeah, that actually doesn't give you energy. At least not the energy that you're thinking of, bouncing off the wall and being all hyperactive. That's a myth that's been debunked dozens of times over. In fact, if anything, sugar just makes you crash harder at the other end without getting you any sort of boost to compensate. In general, all the sugar in the Mountain Dew might actually help you lose focus and alertness, which is the exact opposite of what we want out of our ideal gamer drink. Ultimate Coke and Coke Zero, your weird banana-flavored sodas, they also fall into the same camp, and so we're also eliminating them right now from the race. So how then do we differentiate the rest of the pack? Well, the key difference between an energy drink and a gamer energy drink are the vitamin complexes and amino acids that are mixed into the formula. Usually you'll find that gamer drinks are jammed with ingredients said to boost memory and brain function, specifically the B vitamins and L-tyrosine. That one is an amino acid that can improve memory, thinking skills, and overall mental performance under stressful conditions. Exactly what you need when you're trying to make it through a game with Ash silently judging you just off camera. I see your eyes on me, Ash. I feel your icy stare. It will not faze me. The other component that a lot of these brands try to work in is choline. Now, choline is very similar in function to the B vitamins, but it has an additional use for your body, which is to create acetylcholine. We covered this recently on our macadamia nut episode, but essentially acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that plays an important role in, you guessed it, brain functions like learning and memory. But that's not all. Acetylcholine also plays a major part in voluntary muscle movements like clicking a mouse and clacking a keyboard. So, going back to our gamer drinks, this helps us cull the field even more. Mountain Dew drinks falling short yet again. Based on their ingredients list, sure, they contain plenty of parts from that B vitamin complex, but they're completely devoid of any additional amino acids or extracts that can help with alertness. Overall, they're not actually adding more energy to your system, they're just relying on caffeine to give you a short-term energy booster without any sort of good long-term stabilizers. So, just like that, the field's been narrowed from 10 to 5. Let's take a look at our remaining contestants. Rogue Energy has itself a surprising mix. With just 175 milligrams of caffeine, you'd expect it to be loaded with sugars like Mountain Dew, but it has surprisingly only 1 gram of sugar, meaning that it's not going to give you a whole lot of sugar crash.
A tasty take on a soft, bite-sized blind. New Chips Ahoy Baked Bites.
Rogue also made sure to load you up on vitamin B12. The recommended daily allowance of B12 is only in the 2 to 3 microgram range. Rogue Energy over here is containing a bone-shattering 400 micrograms. And I do mean that whole bone-shattering thing literally. Doses higher than 25 micrograms per day are said to increase the risk of bone fractures according to studies. Maybe it's just because all that energy has you literally bouncing off the walls. Rogue Energy also contains glycine, an amino acid that improves cognitive function and reduces fatigue. There's also L-tyrosine like we talked about before. Overall, everything in Rogue is looking pretty good. You can say it's almost looking too good. You see, everything in here feels uncomfortably targeted, not for boosting memory or cognitive performance, but rather for boosting your overall dopamine level. Dopamine, as most people is known as the happy hormone because of the role it plays in the reward system of our brains. Whenever you do something good, dopamine is released by your brain to make it feel good and want to do that action again. Junk foods and sugar can make our brains flood with dopamine, which is why we tend to get addicted to those things. I mean, don't get me wrong, dopamine has other functions that pertain to memory too, but with how much dopamine triggers rogue energy is shoved into this drink, it almost seems like it's more of a tool to get you addicted to the drink rather than a tool that's helping to boost your KD ratio. Honestly, I'm starting to get a bit worried here. Running through the finalists and nothing's really rising to the top. G Fuel claims to be best for gamers, so maybe there's something there. Well, right off the bat, you can see that G Fuel is leaning heavy on the caffeine angle. Heavy. A massive 300 milligrams of caffeine per 16-ounce can. That right there, that is more than 4 times as caffeinated as Mountain Dew. However, G Fuel also backs up the other side with a slew of vitamins like B12 and amino acids that not only break down fats into energy, but also help generate more proteins like L-tyrosine, which helps create neurotransmitters. That right there is a bonus, because those neurotransmitters are really going to be helping you a lot when you're gaming and need to make a bunch of split-second decisions. Overall, though, that's about as far as the gamer half of the drink goes. G Fuel will give you a heck of a lot of energy. That is very true, don't get me wrong, but the focus element of it is overall lacking, or at the very least, it doesn't really set itself apart from the rest of the pack. Speaking of packs, Sneak doesn't really offer anything different than G Fuel, but let me tell you, some of those flavors were a big ol' swing and a miss.
Do you like stale bubblegum from like 1920? I got a gamer drink for you.
The grape flavor, it got this super squeaky high pitch out of me in a good way. But overall, it doesn't really offer that much to run away with first place either. So what does? I mean, we've kind of run down the entire list of finalists from the taste test without any sort of clear-cut winner. Honestly, that's because when we ran the numbers, the drink that best serves gamers for their energy drink wasn't one of the 3 finalists. That's right, we've got ourselves a last-minute dark horse entering the competition. Victory, thy name is Thick Lemonade.
It's like thick lemonade. It's a weird phrase to use. Thick lemonade. But that is what I just put in my mouth.
Nerd Focus, one of the contestants to not make it into the finals in terms of flavor, gives you everything the other brands do, then takes it to the next level. Get it? Gamer talk there. Caffeine? Well, Nerd Focus actually contains 2 different kinds, which can help with retaining your alertness and counteracting crashes. Plus, it has a large amount of ginseng extract, a plant that can help with energy and keep your cholesterol, inflammation, and blood sugar in check. And with gamer rage being a very real thing, boy oh boy is that necessary. And that's before we even get into the focus components. It has the usual suspects of vitamins, but where it truly excels is providing choline to the body. Like I mentioned earlier in the episode, acetylcholine is vital in memory and learning, but what I didn't mention yet is that it also actively supports your motivation and attention span, which, as far as gaming goes, might as well be the most important thing besides the energy kick. Factor in the boost that it gives to your voluntary muscle movements, and you suddenly have the most important ingredient for attention that every other brand just didn't give enough attention to. Not only is Nerd Focus hitting you with the heart-pumping caffeine injection, and believe me it is, with 160 milligrams of caffeine in a can, but it's also making sure that you're not suddenly getting distracted, so you can keep on punishing those noobs. It may not have been the best drink, the brand of Nerd Energy is far from flattering. Honestly, I'd rather drink anime girls die just for the irony, and the commercial ain't doing itself any favors either. But if we're judging it by its intended function, Nerd Focus is the clear winner, despite what our initial reaction was.
This one's smarter than energy. Not smarter than flavor.
But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bottoms up, gamers. And hey, if you're looking for general energy drink recommendations, that video is over to the left. Red Bull.
Red Bull gives you wings.
Nowadays, it feels like everyone and their mothers has a cookbook coming out. From celebrities like Snoop Dogg and Maddie Matheson to food tubers like Marion Gatsby and Maddie Matheson. But it's not just people who are getting their share of the cookbook pie. Intellectual properties like Sonic and Harry Potter, they're also desperately jotting down recipes for some easy cash flow. And as if Five Nights at Freddy's didn't make enough money this past year, they also decided to release a cookbook back in October. Now, obviously, as one of the foremost FNAF connoisseurs here on YouTube, I had to get my hands on it to dig for information that I could potentially use in a video. But boy, oh boy, what I found was worse than I could have ever imagined. They released an incomplete product. So today I've taken it upon myself to fix their book for them by creating 3 new recipes. But in the process, I'm also going to change the cookbook game forever by using the greatest ingredient that I have in my kitchen, lore. Hello Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory, the show that bites off exactly what it can chew. So in case you missed it, a day ago over on Game Theory, I made the big announcement that on March 9th, I'm going to be uploading the final theory with me as host. I explain why I'm doing this, and I get all wet and sloppy about it over there, but the long and short of it is that I now get 10 final episodes of me hosting these channels before I eventually fade off into the sunset. And so what better way is there for me to kick off my final block of programming than by paying tribute to Freddy and the gang, cooking up some of their delicious recipes straight out of the recently released FNAF cookbook. Except there's one problem. This thing, it is woefully inadequate. I mentioned it before, but while I combed through the pages of the book for things to talk about, I noticed that there were 3 characters notably absent from its pages. Honestly, how I was able to make it past the editors and publishers without any sort of second thought is beyond me. First, we have ourselves the elusive Golden Freddy. I mean, come on, this guy's been all the internet has talked about when it comes to the lore of the series for years. He is the iconic thumbnail guy. The fact that he is not here is a travesty. The second face on this proverbial milk carton is Purple Guy, William Afton himself. Apparently, he'll always come back unless it's doing recipes that are inspired by him. But there was one other character that was missing that shocked me to my core. A character so crucial to this franchise that it's a crime not to have included them. I looked at every recipe, and not one made mention of the most important animatronic in the FNAF universe, my boy.
Let's go! Music Man! No!
But who knows? Maybe the book was already packed with more important things. Let's just see what they chose to include instead, shall we? Mr. Hippo's crispy fish bites. Wow, one rambling monologue gets him in over the main antagonist of the franchise. What else? We got Bellora's salmon burger. That's more of a reach than most of my theories. I mean, don't get me wrong, the connections between Mr. Hippo and fish bites are tenuous at best. Sure, the character's a fan favorite, he says the word fish twice. Clearly there's enough here for a recipe, I suppose. But Bellora? Yeah, she has nothing to do with burgers or salmon. They didn't even try to make an excuse for it in the description of the recipe either. They didn't incorporate her colors at all. Instead, there's a mega mango salad. Because, you know, obviously Bellora, the character from Sister Location, is in the Mega Pizzaplex, not Baby's Pizza World. Not anything related to the word mega. Oh boy, I really have my work cut out for me on fixing this mess. So today, Santi and I put our minds to work on concocting 3 recipes that'll perfectly capture the essence of these 3 characters and make a new section for this cookbook. And we're not just gonna be making generic recipes and slapping characters' names in the titles. Oh no, my friends, you know me. You know that I care more than that. Today, we are gonna be challenging the idea of IP cookbooks as a whole. Historically, these cookbooks based on popular games or movies, they generally go in one of 2 possible ways. One is they have a cute little addition to the character, like Sonic having a chili dog. We all get the rest. But more often than not, they just go choosing recipes that have absolutely nothing to do with the character, like the Pikachu lemon tarts. See, it's yellow. Yay! And of course, because these things are meant to be the most shameless of cash grabs, seldom, if ever, are they taking the character's ambitions, their likes, their dislikes, their lore into the essence of the recipe, into consideration of what makes them edible. And so that, my friends, that is our true goal of today. To not just make a dish for a character, but to truly turn a character into a dish. We're gonna elevate the cookbook game in a way that only Food Theory can. And if you click that subscribe button and make sure to share these recipes, this won't be the last time that we do it either. So without any further ado, Santi!
Hey, Matt, what's up?
Let's start with the recipe for music.
Alright, challenge accepted. What can you tell me about it?
You don't know Music Man? Exist on these channels?
Of course I do. I just wanted to see what you know.
Well, even though he's a personal favorite character of mine, we don't really know all that much about him. We know that he's a DJ in Security Breach. We can even see him with his mixer in-game. In Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, we also find out that he hates loud noises. He's also got a bunch of fun colors worked into his design, like purple and pink and green, so maybe we should do something with that. So that being said, I know what happened the last time he tried incorporating colors into a dish, so no need to harp on that one if it's too difficult.
Too soon, still hurtful, gonna roll right past it, and okay, he's a DJ. So what if we incorporated a round record-like shape into the dish? Then we could do a weird mishmash of flavors like a DJ mixing music up. I'm thinking a taco.
Let's do a taco with a soft shell, because, you know, he doesn't like loud noises, so he wouldn't be a big fan of the crunch.
Right, and we'll do a non-traditional filling, like a sweet and sour chicken to remix a regular taco. Some cilantro and scallions as a garnish for those green hues. But here's the kicker. We're gonna make the tortillas pink with some dragon fruit. That'll tie this all together and really make it Music Man.
So with the rough idea in place, Santi and I are gonna both attempt these dishes, but from opposite ends of the country. Then we're gonna compare the results to see how close our dishes wound up. And immediately off the bat, we noticed how oddly colored our tortilla was turning out.
Basically, if you took a scab and crossed it with a food item.
I mean,
that's what we've
that is what we're looking at right now.
That's what we've created here today, ladies and gentlemen.
And manually pressing tortillas, no easy task, let me tell you.
All right, so we've got our spinning Music Man discs, purple colored in honor of him. That's completing the dragon fruit. Let's add in some of our sweet and sour chicken.
Pretty soft. I'm just gonna cut them up easily biteable tacos going on here.
Because again, it's Music Man. We've got ourselves a flavor remix. Sup, fellow kids. Let's have our soft shell package.
Okay.
We've got some dragon fruit.
Yeah, let's get that in there.
Which again,
that's gonna help. Choices are being made. Strong choices.
You got some green onions?
Yeah, I love some green onions.
In this franchise, that is a mix of green and purple, where green is sometimes the good characters, and purple is very often the bad characters.
Oh!
Music Man is a true neutral, a merging of those 2 points. Green meets purple.
I like that. I think that's very symbolic. What was the dragon fruit?
New Got to Be Curled line is out. Moisturize, define, and control frizz with a lightweight powder.
Cool tacos.
So, how'd it go for you? Oh my god! What happened?
What happened? What do yours look like? Oh, wow. So it's not supposed to look like severed flesh.
No!
Maybe it tastes better than it looks.
What? That's great! I can't believe I'm saying this. This is great.
Yeah. Only the best music. Only the best, my best boy.
Alright, so that one actually tasted pretty darn good despite it looking like a human skin. Now we just have to follow it up with Golden Freddy, which is no easy feat. Golden Freddy has been a mysterious character throughout the entirety of the franchise. At this point, we're pretty sure that the animatronic was possessed by 2 spirits, Cassidy, who was brutally murdered by Afton, and the Crying Child, who fell victim to the bite of 83. We believe that the Crying Child spirit was eventually put to rest during the Happiest Day minigame, but Cassidy, the vengeful spirit, remains, hell-bent on revenge for what William Afton did to them, as well as all the other murdered children.
Yikes. Okay, Golden Freddy is sort of a twist on the original Freddy. So we're gonna take the pizza from the pizzeria and flip it on its head. Or, more accurately, fold it in half. I think a calzone's the only way to go. Some good cheese and sauce, much to Stephanie's chagrin.
That's not a calzone. You've immediately made this a stromboli.
Except it's not, because strombolis are rolled. And sure, traditionally calzones don't have sauce, but that's in the past. Calzones nowadays can absolutely have sauce. Gosh, Stephanie, first the paprika, now this.
I mean, you're still missing the ricotta cheese. Trust me, Steph's family is very Italian. I don't really care. A folded or rolled pizza is delicious no matter what. I'm just saying that if I don't remind you that calzones have ricotta cheese, I'm gonna be disowned from that entire side of my family. Anyway, regardless of what you call it, this folded over pizza will give the Golden Freddy dish a beautiful golden crust. It's on theme. And for the vengeful spirit, let's give it a nice little spicy kick. Some spicy pepperoni and extra herbs in the sauce. But we also have to balance it out with the good spirit inside there, the Crying Child spirit. Probably something sweet.
Oh, please don't say it.
Maybe some, please no, pineapple?
I'm fine, it's fine. Let's do it. A sweet and spicy Golden Freddy Diavola calzone.
Okay, this is a lot of depth. This is gonna be a thick boy.
The thickest. That's also part of the lore of Golden Freddy, obviously.
He's a thick boy?
He's a thick boy.
There's no ricotta.
There's no
Where's
ricotta.
the ricotta?
There's no ricotta.
Where? This is feta! This is feta!
I know you're gonna love this next part, which is where we add in some oil.
Yeah, that's fair.
Some garlic.
Yeah,
and then some sauce.
This sauce is sus.
So what we have here is the Golden Freddy sauce that is included as part of the Freddy Fazbear official cookbook. But what we've done is we've spiced it up a little bit. We've added in a little bit more here to make it a bit spicier. Because at the end of the day, remember, Golden Freddy is stuffed, presumably, with the spirits of 2 kids. The silver lining is that at the end of the day, you're gonna bite into this and it's gonna be a delicious big old bite of 83.
Can't this be one of the other ones that we just feed to our team?
Once again, it would seem that our differences in culinary skill are showing because Santi's looks ooey, gooey, and delicious. Mine and Steph's, though.
Golden Freddy's a loaf.
Golden Freddy. More like Golden Bready. Santi's looks more accurate.
Okay, let's try this one. I want to see if this one looks any better. Oh, mine's a little better.
Hey!
Hey! I think both of them honestly look very nice. Just like Golden Freddy looks nice on the outside. He's pretty unpredictable once you get on the inside, though.
So the sweet, a little spicy, 2 souls in 1.
I have no idea what I'm eating. That doesn't necessarily taste bad.
There's a lot going on in there. Yup. like when you have two spirits merged into one body, having to figure out how they work together. Boom. Done. Nailed it. Lord accurate.
So with that being said, it's time to move on to the grand finale, the purple guy. And for this one, we've got to go big or go home. I mean, this is the main antagonist of the franchise. He always comes back, and we want people to always come back for bites. This is the recipe that can change how people approach IP cookbooks forever. So we've got to make this one right.
Introducing Mrs. Myers for pets, because friendship is messy.
I got you. Plus, I had Tom give me the lowdown while you were cooking, so I'm all caught up. Since this guy is also purple...
He's not purple.
He's not? Dang it, Tom. I'm definitely gonna get him back for that. Fine. What do we got then?
Well, obviously, William Afton's the big bad of the franchise. He's called Purple Guy because he appears purple while hiding in the shadows. But William is also more than just a purple guy. He's intelligent. He's a brilliant roboticist. He's cunning. He's pretty much the entire reason that this franchise exists. He also dies a couple times throughout the series. Once by getting spring-locked in his own animatronic suit, and then after he survives that one, he gets burned down multiple times, at least twice. Nowadays, he's presumed dead, with his consciousness just living on as part of an AI learning program. Not sure what to do with all that when it comes to making food.
Matt, I got this. First, we're gonna go with a double fried steak sandwich. Just like Afton, frying the steak once isn't gonna be enough. We want it nice and crispy. But I love his first death. Getting spring locked with your blood spilling out of your own suit? Hardcore! So as our homage to that, we're gonna place a fried egg in the sandwich that will burst and ooze out as soon as we spring lock it between two deliciously toasted sourdough slices. And for the purple, let's make a sweet and spicy blackberry habanero sauce to take this dish to the next level as a perfect tribute.
We've also got some purple onion that we're just going to sprinkle on to, again, provide a little bit of the purple color. You know, you're looking confused, Stephanie.
Just like the FNAF lore confuses me. It's so perfect. Egg 1 is going in for the drop. Egg 2 is going in.
Nice.
Oh.
2 eggs. They look legitimate.
Gotta admit, the spring lock, it worked perfectly.
Spring lock that serial killer.
Oh, good squish.
The sandwich itself took us a minute to wrap our heads around.
Oh, hold up. Need another bite.
But once we did, we were fans.
Second bite's better. The sauce is actually what helps pull things together.
It is. The crispy outer coating is great. The sauce is great. The egg adds just a slight bit of creaminess, and the onion adds the right crunch. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I kind of think this is a really good dish.
Oh, but let me tell you, this bad boy was crunchy. I think we can all agree that a softer bread might have been easier to bite through. It could help absorb that yolk a bit more, but overall, this recipe came together just really well. Even the sauce, which I was doubtful of at first, it did wonders for the assembly of the dish.
That is a strange mouthful.
Really just goes to show you that a dish is greater than the sum of its parts, because once we took a bite out of the whole thing, it came together well, red onions included. So there you have it, friendos, 3 delicious recipes that do our 3 underrepresented icons of the franchise justice. Also, I just want to call it out there, way more delicious than anything else in this cookbook, even if the tacos did look a bit off-putting. Not only have we fixed and completed their book for them, but we've crafted each recipe as an homage and embodiment of the character that they're based off of. No slapdash recipes that have nothing to do with the characters, no vague nods that clearly show that you tried ham-fisting the characters into a pre-made recipe. Instead, we carefully considered every possible aspect of the character and translated that into edible form. And not only that, but a delicious edible form. And you see, that's the best thing about what we've done here today. By using the lore inherent to these characters, by using the rich detail of them in the source material, we've brought together unique recipes that go way past your traditional burger or pizza recipe, which is honestly what all of these cookbooks should be striving to do. You have all these amazing characters and world details, but you're wasting the potential by slapping the names on generic sandwiches. I know I've dumped on her quite a bit in this episode, but if we were to truly take a look at Ballora, for instance, we'd see that she's a ballerina. Ballet was formalized as a dance form in France. Ballet is delicate, it's classic, it's soft and light, it screams for something like that land. But you can't just forget her rosy cheeks and iconic pearls either. Those are important parts of her design. So we'd want to make these madeleines complete with rose water incorporated for a unique flavor, as well as sprinkling on some edible pearls for a crunch that balances out the airy madeleine with a bite that shows her true nature. Maybe we save that for the next time we do an episode like this. Anyway, the point is that these worlds and characters that we love open up so many opportunities for creative mixes of flavors and styles. Mixes that normally wouldn't fit into the pages of just an average cookbook. That way you're immersed even deeper into the world, and finally you can be the one to take a bite out of Freddy. If you want to see us tackle some more characters from FNAF or honestly some other IP, let us know which ones you'd like to see down in the comments below. And as always, my friends, remember, it's just a theory of food.
discoveries. This is that Sprouts feeling.
There's all that we fight for, all that we fight against. This is the line where our nation's future is won. We are Marines. We were made for this.
Real dairy, 75% less sugar. Introducing Milk 50 by Dairy Pure. Welcome back to Milk.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, and officially page 7 of the FNAF timeline script. Last time we covered the origins of Freddy. We talked about William Afton's childhood dream project of making a singing bear come to life, and the infuriating moment that his dream is copied by a rival restaurant franchise looking to steal away his success. The merger of the two franchises results in William and Henry, a brilliant designer with an knack for robotics. Working together, they make Fredbear's flourish, spawning popular Saturday morning cartoon shows, toy lines, and spin-off restaurants under the Fazbear name. When last we left him, Afton was thriving, the world of robotics opening its eyes to new and exciting ways of bringing characters to life. Things to life, yeah, that was his core driving force, his passion. And it was this very passion that would mutate, twist, and morph from here on out in the story. Because with life, there is inevitably death, something that Afton would become intimately familiar with. But before Afton acquaints himself with death, the impact that style has over your life and how the world treats you. But over time, by educating myself on the ins and outs of the fashion industry, I was better able to achieve my true self and find my own sense of personal style. And that right there, that builds confidence. The way that you look directly affects the way that you feel and the way that other people treat you. So understanding those rules and being able to take some control over all of that is incredibly valuable. It's an educational curve. And what do we do on these channels? We like to educate you while entertaining you, which honestly is why I think this channel is so important for us to launch. There are so many lies and half-truths in the fashion industry that there needs to be someone out there to say, hey, this is right, this is wrong, and this is what science says. Also, you know, we're gonna have a lot of fun because talking about fashion is weird. Like, this channel has already given me the excuse to bludgeon a ballistic head to death using a high heel. It's also the channel where we're gonna physically be testing the viability of female armor, or how many t-shirts it takes to stop a bullet. There's also practical everyday stuff too on this channel. Do school uniforms actually benefit the students? Does it make a difference whether or not you wash your legs in the shower? That's the sort of stuff that you can find on this new channel. In fact, there are 5 new episodes that you can check out right after you finish this beast of an upload. I personally recommend starting with the Killer Heel episode, because this episode's all about the birth of a killer. And while you're over there, consider subscribing. It'll do all of us over here a huge favor, because if we manage to get 1 million subscribers by the end of the month, it'll put us as a top fashion.
Stressed out? Time to refresh your rhythm with Trident. Trident Gum, the fresh chew to refresh your rhythm.
Fashion channel here on YouTube. Show the world that looking smart can be even better than looking cool. So go ahead, enjoy your all-day theory marathon. And now with our logo complete, it's time to complete our other massive ongoing project, this timeline. Onward to part 2, where things are about to get dark in a hurry. 1983, business was booming with 2 whole restaurant franchises running, Fredbear's Family Diner and the newly opened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Together, William and Henry had been able to take the hybrid suit idea and make it into a reality. They called their new invention the Spring. Curiously enough, it was symbolic of the partnership between these 2 men, a human suit as designed by William that could become a freestanding Henry-style robot. But because it was still new tech with kinks to work out, the rollout was limited, restricted only to the Fredbear's Family Diner location. All of this meant that William was busier than ever. He didn't have time to be a full-time parent, so he designed a nanny cam system where cameras and speakers were hidden throughout the neighborhood, as well as in his youngest son's favorite toy, Psychic Friend Fredbear. I mean, plushy Fredbear. But since cameras just weren't enough to raise a kid, he also left childcare duties to his eldest son, Michael. There was just one problem with that. Michael was far from the best babysitter. He tormented his younger brother by jump-scaring him with a Foxy mask and constantly left him behind. William watched all of it from his cameras. Kids would be kids. Tomorrow was another day, after all. Except Michael's torment didn't stop. Bitter, angry thoughts would run through Michael's mind. Why did he have to be the one to take care of this whining, crying? This wasn't fair. It was time that he got even with his brother by playing the ultimate prank. A prank that just so happened to be on this crying child's birthday. He and his friends would take his scared little brother and make him do the one thing that he was terrified of doing, getting close to the animatronics. That would be embarrassing for the kid that was such an embarrassment to him. His brother squirmed. But the squirming boy up to Fredbear's lips, the mouth snapped shut. The sensitive spring lock inside the body had been triggered by the boy's movements. They'd immediately clamped down. The wriggling stopped. The boy went limp, but it was just a prank. It was meant to be funny. The boy was taken to the hospital and was immediately given an IV. Flowers and pills filled the nightstand next to his hospital bed, but the damage was too severe. He couldn't recover. As the younger brother's consciousness began to fade, he could hear Michael's last words, a small and flimsy apology. But his father, Williams, through the voice of the Fredbear plush, were a firm and committed promise to a dying son. You're broken. I will put you back together. This would not be the end. No matter what, Williams' son would live again. It would just take time. Time that, right now, he just didn't have. His young son's heart flatlined as the boy faded into the inky unknown of the afterlife. In the aftermath of the tragedy, changes started happening around the restaurants. Kids were now required to wear security wristbands to prevent anyone from getting outside without parental permission. Any kid who approached the exit without permission would have to answer to the security puppet, a marionette on strings that could fly around on rails across the restaurant to stop kids in their tracks. It was Williams' idea, inspired by Michael constantly leaving the restaurant without his brother. In the wake of Fredbear's spring lock failure, all the hybrid suits were getting retired, locked away at the nearby Freddy Fazbear location. It was yet another tough pill to swallow after all the hard work that Kid Henry had put into them. William would eventually bury the boy's small body in a remote location out in the woods right alongside his drive into and out of work. The death of this little boy spiral. His wife, crippled with grief, was so distraught that all she could do was sit and watch TV. But his son Michael was far worse, complaining of seeing hallucinations of a golden bear standing outside of his window. The boy was so racked with guilt that he was convinced that he was being haunted by the ghost of his brother stuck inside the suit that took his life. The suit's three-toed feet digging into the wet earth. The words, "It's me," ringing through Michael's ears. Some nights, Michael would even go so far as to break out.
Choose to follow your instincts. Every Mazda is designed to feel like it was made just for you.
I wake up.
If you work with PDFs at all, you need Adobe Acrobat. You can edit, share, sign PDFs, and more. The whole PDF kit and caboodle. By the way, what is a caboodle? It's a funny word. Well, whatever it is, if it involves PDFs, Acrobat's got it. Give it a try.
Out of his room to check the gravesite and ensure that his brother was still there. As for William himself, he disappeared into his work and his drinks. Junior's, the local bar, wasn't far from his son's gravesite. He found himself going there more and more frequently, spending longer and longer amounts of time there. The bar gave him a place to think, to remember, to reflect and stew on how Henry had stolen his idea for an animal-themed restaurant. How they'd cut his character out of the cartoon when everyone else was there. How Henry had humiliated him by buying him out of bankruptcy. And now, the robotic part was the part that failed after all. William ordered one more drink, but it was one too many. The bar turned him out and told him to go home. But William didn't go home. Drunk and angry, William raced back to the restaurant to give Henry a piece of his mind. Only to find Steve waiting outside of the building, bullies laughing at her through the window. Fine, some other problem to fix. But then Afton got an idea. A beautifully awful idea. This was his chance to get back at the man that had humiliated him all those years ago. Henry had killed his business, and now Henry's robotic suit had killed his son. It was time for William to do some killing of his own. Let Henry feel what it's like to have something you love get ripped away. While parties continued inside the walls of the pizzeria, William attacked Charlie in the back alley. And it felt good. It felt free. Years of resentment and bitterness trapped in his heart finally released in a moment of pure unapologetic evil. He would make Henry hurt like he hurts. And in that moment, William became a killer. He dropped Charlie's lifeless body and drove home, forced to confront his family's problems later that night. Called, also a little excited by what he had just done. Charlie's death would remain on the books as a random act of violence. Though Henry had suspicions about William, there was no physical evidence, nothing that could link him back to the crime. In the weeks that followed, Fredbear's family diner would close for good. 2 high-profile deaths around the restaurant with 2 grieving owners in such a short period of time was just too much bad press to handle. Besides, Freddy Fazbear's was still open, and it was the newer restaurant